Does he realize he could have a criminal record for his choice to drive? And it could be much worse if he crashes. I wonder what he'll be thinking tomorrow.
Have a Holden 1 at 15.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
Hey everybody, how are you doing? It's your boy DC, Thursday night host of Rogers Out of the Fog.
Right, you kind of got to make your own fun.
Yeah.
Which was a transition for me, going into the morning show here.
Proud. Keep doing the amazing work, will you?
They're learning about how to hire people.
20 years of local matter, so join me every Thursday night and see what's going on in the fog.
This is Rogers TV.
Welcome back to Gale Force Wins Season 2 on Rogers TV, where we explore the journeys of interesting people in and around Newfoundland, Labrador, Canada, and the rest of the world. Chance Theatre is building anew. The Timbers have moved up the road to a permanent new home in Conception Harbor. Located in the former Immaculate Conception Convent, their home has now become the home of Perchance. Gale Force Winds recorded conversations with some of the people who make Perchance an inspiration. This is one of those conversations. Thanks for joining us on Perchance to Dream, the podcast. Produced by Gale Force Winds.
There is a tide in the affairs of men, which, taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. Welcome to the Perchance to Dream podcast, and what a pleasure it is to be in conversation with some of the people behind the scenes that make this whole theatre production run. I'm Alan Dale. With me, as always, my good buddy Gerry Carew. Andy, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, my name is Andy Jones, and I'm an actor and a writer from St. John's, and I was born here in 1948, and I kind of got involved in theatre when I was a kid in school with, in the Catholic education system. There was lots and lots of...
What school was that, Andy?
I went to St. Bon's for undergraduate, or what do you call it, grammar school, and then the system changed around that time, and I went to Gonzaga, to the Jesuits for high school, and then I went on to university in Halifax at St. Mary's, but I was always interested in drama, and we did lots of stuff in school. We did Shakespeare, in fact, in high school. And then when I went to university, I did English, but I really wanted to get involved in the theatre, so I studied at the University of Toronto for a disastrous year. And then I went to the University of Alberta drama department for another year, which was better. And then eventually I went teaching for a year, and then I went out and became an actor, and just kind of got a job. And then for the last 51 years, I've been more or less working, or thinking about working, or planning to work, or getting something together.
Tell me about those early days when you were bitten by that acting bug, if it were in Gonzaga or St. Paul. Tell me about those days.
Well, I think, there's that tradition in Newfoundland anyway. Like, my father was from Harbour Grace, and all his family, including him, all performed in all the St. Patrick's Day thing, and plus they had regular shows they were doing all the time, performances, and my mother was she was not I always called her a kitchen performer. She was the funniest person I ever met in my life, but she was so performing was always a big part of our lives, and it was highly praised and encouraged, and being able to tell a story and all that kind of stuff, as most Newfoundland families, was important. So I did that, and it come time to do theatre, I was really encouraged. And when it came time I decided to become an actor. Even then, my parents were, they were worried, but they were, they understood it in a way, and encouraged me. Oh, thank God. So that's where it kind of really begun at home, I think. And also all those things in the schools really make a huge difference. And it was a place to go for people who were weird like me too, like, able to hang out with the theater crowd.
What do you mean people that were weird like me? Tell me about that. How did you perceive? Because I can tell you, the perception of you as an actor is, you are quite an accomplished actor. And you used to people that were weird like me. Tell me a little bit about that. How did you perceive yourself back in the day?
Well, I was definitely different, and I definitely was bisexual, so I wasn't necessarily with the jock crowd or whatever, and although I was academically strong always. But I had a place to go, and there was, and I think that a lot of people in the arts generally are different or have a different sensibility or a different approach to life, and it's a great vehicle for them, and I'm glad that the schools provide that when they do.
Creative space. There's no doubt about it. Tell me, a person like yourself, 51 years creating.
Yep.
What must that feel like?
Well, it doesn't really feel like anything as a whole thing. I just keep, I sort of thought I must be a writer because looking back, I thought I wrote all this stuff. Then I realized, oh yeah, I guess I am a writer. But I wasn't thinking I was going to be a writer at the beginning. But I did want to be an actor of some sort. But I think what we wanted to do was sketch comedy, which is what I did do, and I'm still kind of doing in a way. And although I got involved with, Danielle got me to, and Aidan and Julie and Kylie, and those guys got me to do the Shakespeare eventually, right? And Greg Malone did work with them a lot too. I wasn't thinking it particularly. I wasn't planning anything,
right?
But stuff just happened.
Now, you say sketch comedy, so many of our audience wouldn't understand the process of sketch comedy. To walk us through that, because you say it so quickly, but walk us through what sketch comedy is.
Remember, I don't know how old you are, but certainly sketch comedy was kind of king of the world in many ways, other than film and stuff like that, but like Monty Python and SCTV, and a lot of the American, all the big American comedians had their own shows. Always had sketches in them, right, like that. And this is what I wanted to do. And we went, as high school kids, where we had a tape recorder. My father sold tape recorders, so we had one. We used to do little things on tape like that. And this was really what I wanted to do more than anything. And right away, almost, I got to do it. The second show I ever did in my life was with Ken Campbell, an English director who came to Canada to do a stint at Theatre Passepartout in Toronto, and I got hired for a sketch comedy show called Pilk's Madhouse. And then, God damn it, didn't his company break up while he was in Canada? Wow. And they invited us to come over and take the company's place and perform at the Royal Court Theatre in London, upstairs in the rehearsal, up in the second space, kind of like, the fringe space, we'll call it. And so I was an actor for 6 months or something, and I was upstairs at the Royal Court in London, and I gotta tell you, it was a fucking disaster.
Well, how old were you? 20?
I was 24, I think, yeah. And it was like, we were totally out of our depth, completely, totally. Anyway, just to be totally honest with you, the reviews, it was called the Ken Campbell Roadshow, and the reviews said stuff like, they weren't mad at us, they were just heartbroken. And they said, what on earth has happened to the Ken Campbell Roadshow? That's what the Financial Times of London said. And so it was a total disaster. But anyway, we carried on, we had to carry on anyway. We had a limited run. And then I met all these other actors there who were really great. And then we got our own company together in London, called the Madhouse Company of London. And we figured out how to do it. And we got some English actors to work with us, and we did quite well, actually. We finally figured out how to break through that thing. We were so inexperienced, and so we toured with them. And I forget the question, why I'm going down this road.
As a young fella, you know, at 24 years old, as you describe yourself, from just outside of St. John's, what was it like then for you in London, in like an actor, on the world stage?
Well, I was like, you know something? I tell you the truth. Downstairs, at the Royal Court, there was a play, Penny.
Really?
And didn't Samuel Beckett come, of course, to see his play, and he was used to go to the pub next door. And one day, wasn't quite sure what Samuel Beckett was at that point in my life, but we were on stage one day rehearsing, and one of the Irish actors said, you know, don't look now, lads, but Sam Beckett's at the back of the hall watching us, right? And so Samuel Beckett watched our rehearsals. That's my famous person story.
But you didn't really know who he was, so it didn't matter to you that much, I guess, at that time.
I think I must have known the name or something.
Yeah.
You know, like, this guy's big.
Yeah.
And you know, so it felt great, and we were like we were just sucked into this world of people who were really into comedy, and you know, that British comedy, which I loved and still love. They're still the fucking best. You know, of course, the Americans are amazing too. But you know, that world, I was so taken with these parties we would go to, and people were, you know, they were so funny. I never laughed so much in my life. And Ken Gale was, you know, except for my mother, was the funniest person I ever met. We had so much fun. It was a great feeling, and I really did enjoy that. And then, of course, unfortunately, the show was such a disaster, which kind of like brought us down a good bit. But anyway, we were, you know, Ken didn't mind that. He just was, you know, hoping to give us an adventure, which he did. So we had a great time, and so yeah, it was a great feeling. And then I came back, and we could have had further. In fact, we had a guy who wanted to sign us in New York. His name was Charlie Rothschild.
Based on your disaster in England?
No, based on the success after that.
Okay.
Yeah. So once we figured out what we're going to do, and we took over Ken's other show, another show called An Evening with Sylvester McCoy, Human Bomb. And so we did that. So we had the two shows, and then this guy wanted to sign us, and I came back and saw Codco, and they had done their first show without me, and we've always been friends.
Yeah.
And so I said, no, I'm going to go back to Newfoundland. And he said, are you serious? Like, you know what I mean? You're going to Newfoundland?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm giving you this opportunity. I said, no. I know what I want.
Right.
I want to be there, and I got to be with these guys, which I had to say, guys, will you do another show and put me in it? And they said, yeah, they would. So,
Tell me about those early Codco deals.
Well, it was very chaotic and very precise. Two things constantly working. We were in chaos. We were personally, you know, kind of involved with each other in every way, and there were not many boundaries, and we were a dysfunctional family, highly dysfunctional family, I'd say. And we were literally, my sister was in the company, Greg Malone was my friend since grade 1, 1954. You know, Mary Walsh had gone to school with my sister. You know, Bob Joy had gone to school with us at St. Bon's, and Tommy Sexton also. So we all kind of knew each other. We were all, except for Diane, we're all Irish Catholic Newfoundlanders with, you know, much the same worldview. So we coalesced on that level, and we just come through the Newfoundland education system, you know. So we're still reeling, which I still am. It's like the Big Bang.
We both have come through that as well.
Yeah. It's like, you know, there's still the noise of the Big Bang is still out there. It's the same thing with us, right? And anyway, so we did a lot of material about that, of course.
Yeah.
You know, and then at the same time, we were very precise about what we said on stage. People think, oh, you guys made that up as you went along. No.
Sorry.
We made almost nothing up on stage.
Really?
We scripted ourselves very tightly, and we were always into like, how did you say that last night? No, you said that. It's the verb and the noun, and, you know, which is really like sketch. That's like stand-up. Stand-up comedians are so precise. They have to be absolutely precise. It's amazing what they do. And so we were much like that. So everything we did, now things would happen on stage, and we improvise, and then usually we'd say, let's put that in the show now, like that, right? So we were both those things. So it was an incredible trip. We went to work every day, and we sat around with 6 other people and just thought of the funniest things we could think of. We told every story about growing up. We told every story about that our parents told us. We imitated every teacher we ever had, every neighbor we ever had, and just out of that chaos of each day, and try to get home early, and what are we going to have for lunch, and like that, right? I mean, you're showing up late. We eventually would get, and we had a book, and someone would be on the book. Every day some person was on the book, and they would write down kind of our ideas, and then we get the panic, the show's opening in 2 weeks, or that, what are we going to do, and put it all together and put the pieces together. And we wrote some real good material, some stuff that wasn't that great, but I've been going over it for some of it recently, and there's some excellent material there. And it was lots and lots of fun. And we were hitting something in terms of the culture at that time. It was all happening. People were, there was a sense of, there was a sense in Newfoundland that, we had to kind of prove to ourselves, which we knew anyway. We always knew we had a strong culture. We always knew we were an extraordinarily interesting place, which people seem to be just discovering now to some extent. Yeah. We knew that we had a literary and verbal and storytelling tradition like no other English, or not like no other, but like not many other English-speaking people in North America, not counting the French because they had their own thing. And we knew, that we were smart, and that we had survived like almost nobody on this little island, and we were extremely inventive, and that we had built this culture. We had thousands of songs about Newfoundland.
I know.
I mean, how many songs about Ontario? I don't mean to be mean now, but it's 4.
We only have 2 Ontario people that watch us. Don't worry.
That's good. I'm sorry. I love you. Of course, I love Ontario. Of course, I love it. I lived in Toronto, and I think it's the greatest city in the world. So we had all that, and we were the first Newfoundlanders to get educated. Like, we all went to university. At one time, you had to be an Arab or Bowering to go to university, right? And suddenly, Smallwood and the way the world had changed, and post-colonial, what we call post-colonial, which is a different term now, I guess. But that whole thing of like, let's make our own stuff, happened. And we used to go to the Canada Council. Some of us, we would go to be on juries, and they would say, there must be 2% of your program must be Canadian. He said, 100% of our work is Canadian, and not just us. Every company, Chris Brooks with the Mummers Troupe and the Rising Tide eventually, and everyone was doing. We were doing our own stuff. We had a totally different model than the rest of Canada. Like every other theatre had, Halifax had the Neptune, Edmonton had the Jubilee or whatever. Each place in Canada had their regional, and they were kind of like a slight imitation of England. Or kind of America, kind of like they had plays, and we never had that. Just luckily, I guess. So we just developed our own stuff, which I think is probably one of the reasons why, arguably, Newfoundland has dominated the comedy field to some extent. Not totally, but this incredible Canadian stuff from out west, and like Brent Butt and those guys are just absolutely fantastic. And of course, Kids in the Hall and SCTV and all those incredible things. But the last 20 years or so, Newfoundland has dominated in many ways the comedy world.
And you describe your life in Concord. It's like I'm talking to a teenager. You're so excited, even in the moment now.
It was so much fun. I mean, we fought like dogs. Oh my God, we had some terrible fights. But at the same time, I never ever had that experience again in my life. I don't think quite that way, where I just go to work and say, my job today is to think of every funny thing I can ever think of and tell the funniest stories and bring in characters. And that's what we did all day until we got the panic and then do a show.
How long did the Codco period last, Andy?
The theatre company lasted they started in October of 73, and I joined in July of 74, and it went until December of 76. So really it was just about 3 years, the original theatre company. And then 10 years later, Michael Donovan from Halifax, from Salter Street Films, approached us and asked us if we would do a television series. And we could use our own material, and he had seen us on stage. So we said, yeah, we put all kinds of restrictions on everything. It was foolish, but he did give us a chance to do it, and he was 100% behind whatever we wanted to do. I gotta say, man, he, the more edgy, the better for him. And he fought the battles with, luckily we were in Halifax, we didn't have to deal with Toronto. Not to say anything bad about Toronto again, but he fought those battles for us.
You must have had some battles, because I've watched, a lot of your skits are on YouTube, you probably know that.
Yeah.
It was edgy.
It was edgy back then.
You'd probably get cancelled today for doing that.
I'm not sure, because I'm sure we're politically incorrect in many ways, but I think that no, Michael Donovan.
He was a barrier there for you.
He really laid down those rules. Go as far as you want, and I'll figure it out at the other end.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no. It was,
have you ever had work with anyone like that since?
Well, I've worked with lots of people like that because we're in the theater. But in terms of TV world, I've met very few. I don't think anyone else gets away with it quite. And of course, Kids in the Hall were also fighting their battles. They were very strong. The same. We were exactly parallel.
Yeah.
We were on TV the same year.
Right.
We were half an hour each. That's how the series, how we both went on TV.
The way you describe it all and the way you pepper Newfoundland, and and interestingly enough, very similar to the conversations we have with business people about how Newfoundland is so successful and different things. And there's a secret sauce here. There's something about this place that allows things to flourish. What would you describe that secret sauce as?
I don't know, just a confluence of historical fortune or something. I don't know. We were really isolated in a way that Nova Scotia, for example, wasn't. Nova Scotia was a fishing place, but they also had incredible farming, and also they could walk to the States if they had to. Yeah. We were a different country, so we were not allowed to just go over the border. We had to have a passport to get from Newfoundland to Nova Scotia, right? And you go through customs when you came from Halifax. So things develop here. I think that in that situation, people, started to write what songs were available to us. Not give me land, lots of land with a white open. We didn't quite have that. We didn't have any of the farm songs. We had to get our own songs and stuff like that, which people do. This is just my own theory now, but somehow that people were sitting in twine lofts, doing, making their twine ready for the next year, and somebody had to write a song, and there was no songs about that. So they wrote them, otherwise they wouldn't have any songs to sing. And there was no, the world wasn't providing them with it. You know what I mean? So that's just my little theory, that we were forced to develop so many things. And also, there was an amazing creativity within all these communities, because there wasn't much government help, and people built things, built wharves, and built, fishing, systems for getting stuff aboard. And these places that lived, my God, these like Greats Cove. You ever heard of Greats Cove? Like they used to have, my friend Maisie Kellen, really her name, she said they used to lower the boiled dinners down to the men. It took so long to get down to the water, they couldn't just come up and have their lunch or whatever like that. They had to have, women would lower it down to them like that. And so people figured all this stuff out, and survived pretty well. And I know sometimes they didn't survive that well. And I know that there was poverty at various times. And so I know it's a bit of a mixed bag, but it seems like ultimately we did survive. And that's the thing I thought we were bringing into Canada. And it was very surprising for us as young Newfoundlanders to be made fun of on the mainland. Like that. You say, oh, you're a Newfoundlander. They're like, well, what's so funny about that? Yeah. And we went through that period. That's over now, thank God. Now it's like, it's very cool to be a Newfoundlander now.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So I have a question for you now, and mostly I think our audience would appreciate this. The difference between theater and being on television. How do you define that for our audience?
Well, there's almost no comparison.
Okay.
I just find that the experience for me is just incredible. Every time it's a journey. It's a complete journey. Like you go, opening line, last line. I go, whoa! I just went through that journey. And if you're enjoying yourself, if it's not too difficult, that's an incredible journey. You never, ever, ever get that on film. So you get that quick scenes like that, and you do have to be there in the same way. I think, I don't think you can cut around. Ultimately, a good film is a good performance, and everyone's in the moment, and the timing is right there. The timing isn't built afterwards by cutting to the close-up. And I think you can, but I don't think it ever works quite as well as when you're there and then you get the close-up from that particular take. So there's no comparison. I would way, way, way rather be on stage than be on film. Although I got to say, in Codco, we got to run the shop ourselves, and we could take all the candy we wanted, and we did it, and we had lots of fun, and we were able to improvise. We were able to change what we were doing on the floor, which we didn't do too much because we were trying to give them a break. But we had directors who were very, very good directors too. John Blanchard was one of them, and David Akamba was the other one. And they, so we were allowed to create in that situation. And so that's the whole thing, I guess, like you were saying earlier. It's about the ability to create. So that's different. But walking onto a film set, I don't know, sometimes it does feel like I felt with Rare Birds. Have you ever seen Rare Birds?
Yes, of course.
Like that film is probably the best film I ever performed in. I got the most comment from people all my life about that film. And I thought after a couple of days, I think we're onto something here. This is an interesting film. Ed Rich wrote the script, of course. Yeah. So I love Ed's writing. I love saying his words because I don't know what it is. I could just connect with his words. And then the American actor William Hurt, who was in it, was a guy who insisted that it be about the acting, which nobody liked, because most movies is about the sound guy and the lighting guy, whom I love, of course. They're so important, but so much is about the technology. I said, we didn't get that, because I said, well, we got a great performance. But the sound guy, whatever.
Screwed it up.
Whatever, so yeah, it drives you crazy. Then when you look at the movie, you think, that's the one where the sound was perfect, but I wasn't doing it anyway. But he made it. He did a great job in that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Did he have total command of the set? Was he?
He had the command of the set that came from, I would say, being a bit of an asshole. He's dead, so I can say it. Mm-hmm. But also, he was also a Hollywood star at one point in his life, and so naturally, I knew as soon as I heard that we're going to get a star like that he would have a lot of influence. And he came into the set one day, this is true, and they had the kitchen, the ark, and they had the dining room, and like that, and they had the kitchen lit, and they were going to do all the scenes in the kitchen. So if you leave the kitchen, you'd stop, and then that night or the next day they would shoot. But after you went through the door, he said, no, I want the whole thing lit so that I can walk from that scene right into the other scene. And they went, it took them all night to light that. Right. So we got there at 7 o'clock in the morning or something, and we didn't shoot until 8 o'clock that evening. Like that. And he just made it happen. And I was going I could never say this in a million years. And he wanted to have rehearsal, and we had meetings every morning in his trailer.
Really?
The director and me and him and the other actors would sit and we would talk, and we'd discuss what was being done and what was happening that day. So that was a great experience, right?
When you found out you were going to be acting with him, was there nervousness on your part? Big Hollywood guy, or you had already?
I think so, yeah. And I was, of course, I was nervous about that, and I'm nervous anyway. But he turned out to be also. This is a lot about William Hurt now, but he, sometimes actors don't have to be there for your close-ups. If you can imagine, so that the script assistant will say the lines and you will do your close-ups. He didn't do that. He was there and was acting, performing full out while you were getting your close-ups done. And if I would change what I was doing a bit, he would change his performance a bit.
He was trying to help you, obviously.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He was totally there.
Andy, wow, what a great story. Yeah. You talk about nervous, and you talk about you made a comment about stepping out on the stage and making your first line in a theatrical performance.
Yeah.
Tell me, that's an experience most people will never get in their life.
Yeah.
Tell me what it must be like in that moment when you step out on stage, you can see the audience, and you're delivering your first line.
Yeah.
What's going through your mind?
Well, I was just thinking, I just did a show, just did 11 shows of a new show. And I can remember being, beyond, I don't know what the feeling of nervousness is. I don't know. I couldn't define it, how nervous you are, like that, right? And then you go and say, I always say, all right, what I'm doing is I say my first line over in my head to myself, and I say, I'm going out now, I'll be lying down, I'll have my piece of chalk there, I'll be on the floor, and then the lights will come up, then I will wake up and I will snore for 10 snores, then I'll move my leg, and then I'll do that. And then once I get there, I'm okay. And then I go through, and then I'm more or less, surviving and thinking, on my feet all the way through to get through the whole show. And then it is like a little life in a way. I'm being overly dramatic now. It's not like that's the exaggeration. But it is like kind of a journey anyway. Right. It's a real journey, and you start, you go, whoa, and then you come out the other. And sometimes you die during the show, like you actually, your death scene is in the show. Like I remember doing Love and Anger in Calgary, and the actresses were so great. That when I was dead on the floor, they were crying. Tears falling on me like this. I thought, oh my God, this is incredible.
They really miss you.
So stuff like that, like you can't quite, and not every show's like that either. Of course, there's lots of shows where you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? But when you get that thing that happens, that's, it's like, I guess it's like a special journey. It's not like a life, that's exaggerating.
Take us on your path to Perchance Theatre. Tell us a little bit about where we are in the moment and why that's important.
Well, the original performers, original founders, of course, one of whom was Aidan, who was here with you guys today. And those guys, they wanted to, do a thing. There was a legacy, special legacy happening because it was 2010, which was 400 years since John Guy had come and set up his colony out there. And of course, I can imagine John Guy. Oh, he certainly knew who Shakespeare was, guaranteed. Shakespeare probably knew who he was because, he was a well-known guy. He was out in the New World, and Shakespeare refers to, in The Tempest, he refers to the New World and Bermuda, I guess he says. And and to think that here was where it happened, and there's a building down the way, that's the building that they built, and here we are, have a chance to do the work of a contemporary of John Guy's. I thought it was a very, very exciting idea. So they asked me to do it, and I hadn't done very much that kind of acting. I had done nothing, I don't think. Well, no, we had done The Tempest in '82, when the Ocean Ranger went down that same week. We were on stage, and there was The Tempest. And I said, I don't know whether this influenced them, their choice, but I said I would love to do Falstaff. Was a character I was interested in doing in Shakespeare. And I thought, okay, I honestly didn't think Shakespeare was funny. I didn't think anybody, I thought, people sort of pretend they're laughing at Shakespeare. But I discovered he is funny. Obviously there's a reason why he lasted so long. And that Falstaff is a very funny character. And I suddenly realized the reason he's funny is because he takes himself so seriously, and that's the humor of Falstaff. He's witty, and he knows he's witty, but he is so serious, and the guys are always making fun of him like that, right? You know what I mean? And he's just standing firm like that. That's where the humor comes from. And he's so full of himself like that. And then I got to do Merry Wives of Windsor, also a few years later, and. In 2014, and then he thinks these two women are in love with him. Like he gets these false letters, so it deceives them just to fool them. And of course, he's totally convinced that these two women who are married, happily married women, are totally in love with him. So the whole play is about him, trying to, meet their needs or whatever, right? And, so it's totally. So I got that chance to do that, and then. Gosh, I forget his name now. Anybody know really well? Anyway, but I got to do Tartuffe with Gillian Kiley directing, and that was Molière. It was the first time they did a non-Shakespeare there, and they asked me to adapt it to Newfoundland, right? And I said, I don't know, man, how the hell can I? This is 16th century, 17th century France. It's a royal family. The king is there, all this stuff like that, right? And I said, and I said, well, I guess it could be a family. I was thinking it could be a rich Newfoundland family, because they were a very wealthy family in the play. And I thought, then I thought, maybe it could be an outport, a Newfoundland, merchant family. Mm-hmm. And I asked my neighbor, Galvin Lake, and I said, do you know any people who were, a rich family who had a son who was who was a war hero? And he said, my gosh, he said, yes, there's a family of Spencers out in Grand Bank. And one of their sons was in the First World War, and he was a brilliant guy, and he was a great fly fisherman. He lost his arm and part of his shoulder in Gallipoli, I think. Wow. He never even made it to Beaumont Hamel, but was a great fly fisherman. He used to tie flies with one hand. So I made him, I based Orgon, the main character, on him. And then it just fit perfectly. And then it turned out the king was in Newfoundland in 1939. So I put it there, and then they had to send a message to the king to get him forgiven for his crime. And it turned out that, of course, there was Rockwell Kent was that famous artist who was just over here in Brigus, and he had gotten in trouble with the Newfoundland government because he said some pro-German stuff during the First World War, and he was kicked out of Newfoundland. So the character, so I made Orgon had defended him, and that's why he was in trouble with the king. Oh, the king forgave him, and so it all worked out incredibly well. The only thing she said to me, she said, but it has to be rhyming couplets. The whole play, every 2 lines have to rhyme. So I can't do that. But I did. It took me years. Actually, it took me a couple of years. But I did that version, then I rewrote again, and I had to make everything. I used to work sometimes. I'd work all day, and I'd get 6 lines written. How am I ever going to make this rhyme? And I had to be totally Newfoundland, and also I can't speak French hardly at all, so I had to use other translations. I used 3 other translations, and I tried to not use any words that they used in English, right? Wow. So that was the second thing, and then I got to do The Merry Wives of Windsor, and then I also got to do Bottom in Midsummer Night's Dream, which I really love doing too, right? So I got the best comedy parts ever, and then to do to be Tartuffe in that play and get to be the fundamentalist preacher guy was right up my alley.
Perchance in the moment here in Conception Harbor, tell us about what it means to you.
Oh, I'm so happy that they moved here, and I'm so happy that I went and saw the show the other night, High Steel, and the fact that they've done this, what a gargantuan vision they had to do this, right? And also what grit they had to make this. Take it from one place and move it all to another place, they never lost that vision that Danielle has, and the other people who are working with her. I know Heather and everybody else, and so I just, I wrote to her after the opening. I said, you've done something amazing here, right? You really have, fulfilled something cultural. It's like a very important cultural moment in Newfoundland that they managed to keep this going, and they managed to do this show and to do this High Steel right in the community, iron workers, local numbers right down the road there, and to open that way, to be theater that's so relevant, it's just incredible. Yeah.
What do you see over the horizon for theater in Newfoundland? Tell me that you've had a journey. quite a journey.
Yeah.
And you've been a part of the foundation of this. What do you see over the horizon?
Well, I think that stuff like this, there's an incredible generation coming up. You know, we have a lot of playwrights now, which we didn't have. Most things were collective in those days, like Megan Gale Coles and, you know, the young Alison Kelly and, you know, the new sketch comedy group, Mom's Girls, and, you know, Robert Chafe, of course. So there's endless possibilities in that world. All of a sudden we're learning how to do that and how to present them. And of course, Perchance has presented their modern plays right here on stage, which is great. So that's the way we're going, I think, for sure. And there seems like endless amount of talent and endless amount of storytelling abilities coming up through. So I feel also that, just having talked to them a bit, that they want to get involved in the community, and they want, just like I was that kid in high school. It was a bit different, maybe, I don't know, but you know, it's a place they want to keep this creativity and to hand it on to the younger people who are coming along, and have programs here for that, and make it a really important part of the local community, which I think is, I mean, I couldn't ask for anything better than that, I don't think.
Gerry, your thoughts?
Well, I just want to say, Andy, thank you. Listening to your talks, absolute joy. You've entertained so many people. The incredible body of work that you've done, and continues to live on YouTube in various places. It's just a pleasure to be sitting with you today.
Great, thank you.
Thank you
for sharing. Guys very much. Yeah, it was very nice.
I tell you, I feel overwhelmed with creativity just being in your orbit. So thanks for being on the Perchance Theatre podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to be in conversation with you.
Thank you guys very much, and thank you for supporting this company, which is just a brilliant event in our cultural history.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you for watching Gale Force Wins Season 2 on Rogers TV.
We know it's busy organizing a trade show. That's why we created the Gale Force Wins content creation technique. Allow us to capture all the interviews and goings-on at the trade show to make a splash for your event. Well, here we are in a very interesting place for sure.
Are we ever?
Are we ever, Gerry? Yeah. We're on board the HMCS Margaret Brooks. It's a Harry DeWolf class Arctic offshore patrol ship. It's brand spanking new. Now, Gerry and I just had the pleasure of walking through Irving Shipyard, where we actually saw the steel being cut and assembled to produce this amazing ship. I can tell you right now, this thing here is something that all Canadians should be proud of. What a combination of government, academia, and industry, everybody working together to produce this amazing ship. But this ship does not work on its own. This ship needs people to make it function. And as I was walking through the ship today, I ran into a person whose smile lit up the room. And I said, I've got to talk to this person on Gale Force Wins. So without further ado, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the operations officer on board the Margaret Brook. My name is Natalia Botstroff. Very interesting background, as you could tell from the last name. So born and raised in Poland. My parents, interestingly enough, my mom is Polish, my dad is Russian-German, so a very interesting mix there.
Right.
So I moved to Canada when I was 10 years old.
Right.
Spoke no English whatsoever, and my parents both endeavored to move into a community that wasn't so Polish-oriented, because we wanted to learn the language, learn the ways of Canada.
Right.
I was born in a very, very regimented household.
Tell me about that.
You know, like, you got up every morning at a certain time, you got dressed, made your bed, you ate, you ate with the family, you'd go to school, you'd come home, and it was a very routine-oriented household. You know, there was chores like making sure that my father's boots were always clean.
Okay.
Really?
My brother and I were shining my father's shoes.
Yes.
So already...
But I'm just going to say, boys, if you're watching this, you hear this? My boots better be shined when I get home.
So this is from a very early age. You know, and it wasn't, it was a loving family,
right.
Yes.
But very different.
Yeah.
You know, and this goes back sort of to how they were raised.
Yeah.
My father came from a military background.
I was going to ask, it kind of sounded like that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And, you know, calling my dad sir, that was very common.
Really?
Oh, very different, very different.
So he was an officer, obviously, then, was
He was an officer.
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
In the Russian military?
Russian military,
Okay,
yes.
wow.
Yes.
Okay.
So he was an officer. And, you know, I don't know all the ins and outs of
Right.
his upbringing, but just from, you know, how I was raised, I could tell that he was from a very strict household as well. And I think that's pretty much what led me to wanting to join the military. Although, I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know Canada had a military.
Okay, well, this is good. I want to stay.
How old were you when you came?
So I was 10 years old.
Okay.
My dad came here earlier just to sort of get the lay of the land.
Right, okay.
And then my mom and my brother, we immigrated here after.
I want to stay in Poland for a second.
Sure.
Tell me about that. What do you remember growing up there, and the food and all that?
Oh yeah, so I distinctly remember going to a deli shop and still, like, you know, Poland was communist.
Right.
So still remember not having any monetary exchange. So going with like stamps.
All right.
Where you were, you know, based on your household, you had 4 people, this is how much food you're allotted.
Yeah.
So I remember those interactions.
Yeah.
I do remember having unlimited number of sports to be a part of.
Yeah.
Because back then, it didn't matter how much money you had.
Right.
Kids all had, you know, whether you were from the lower class or from the higher class, we were all into sports. Education was great from what I remember.
Yeah.
But
what was your sport? What sports did you like?
So my parents really put me into rowing.
Okay,
That was a big thing, and that actually translated when I came to Canada as well. It's a pursuit and continue.
I'm starting to see some connections here. Military, rowing. It's all some of the things are starting to make sense.
It's all connected.
It's all connected.
It really is.
So you were 10 years old. You arrive in Canada.
Yes.
Tell me about the first few years in Canada for you.
It was challenging. It was a culture shock for me as a 10-year-old. You know, I had my friends back home.
Yeah.
And tennis, it's a difficult time.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're sort of in that, you know, teenage age.
Yeah.
I just remember, like, even dressing was different.
Right.
You know, I remember going to school for my first year of school, and my mom put me in I'll never forget this, was a yellow jumpsuit. My hair was in pigtails, because that was cool back in Poland.
Sure.
Your first day here, she did that.
Yeah. Well, she didn't know any better, right?
You were one of the cool girls then in a yellow jumpsuit, eh?
We thought it was, right? But it certainly wasn't. It was difficult. It really was. You know,
I'm laughing now, but I don't mean to diminish that. That would have been challenging.
It was challenging because we spoke no English.
And then Canadians were probably not that friendly to you in that scenario.
Think about it, right? Who's this weird girl, right? Like, look at her. Look at how she's dressed. Doesn't speak any English. My mannerisms was very different.
Sure.
Right? You know.
You're shining boots.
Well, that's it, right? Yeah. Kids were, yelling out things, and here I am, raising my hand or not, and it was a very challenging time. Luckily, we had Hooked on Phonics.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard about it. It's a fantastic program. It certainly worked for me.
Okay.
I did do Hooked on Phonics.
I did something like that on records. I don't remember the name of it though. But anyway, yeah, go ahead.
So it just slowly progressed, learning the language, and
wow. So schooling? Do you remember schooling? Like, what did you do? You went to high school in Canada?
Yes. So I did. So back home in Poland, like here, you learn French as your second language.
Right.
So back then, we were taught Russian as our second language, not English, which is like now has completely changed.
Right.
So we did that, and coming here, learning English, that's all I did. But my parents really wanted to still ensure that I spoke Polish.
Okay.
So Polish is my first language.
Wow.
Still is.
So you speak Polish? You speak Russian
fluent.
Still?
Russian, not so much anymore, based on just, I speak to my family in Polish.
Right.
But one day I will endeavor to go back into the books and learn Russian. But so I did, high school. I learned English, did all that, and went off to university.
Where'd you go?
Get this, I went to Queen's University.
Okay.
And where is RMC?
Right next door.
Right there. And I never put 2 and 2 together. Yeah. Military. Canada's a military, right?
Right.
Never put 2 and 2 together.
What were you studying at Queen's?
Psychology.
Okay.
Okay, so you're in Queen's. You see these people around in red uniforms. You guys say, okay, Canada's got a military. Then what happens?
Nothing. Nothing happened. So this whole time, I could have had this amazing education, a free education through RMC.
Right.
No, I decided to go Queen's, lots of debt afterwards. But I was actually at a rowing competition one day. And there was this bus, a recruiting bus.
Okay.
And at this point, I got into finance. I worked for TD. I worked the corporate life. This is after university.
In Toronto.
In Toronto, yeah. I worked right on Yonge, TD, right? Hated the, it was just not my thing, right?
This is a little bit different than
You
that.
would think, right? Absolutely. So I was really tired of that lifestyle, and this bus was there. And I went in, they were asking all these questions. I thought, you know what? I'm going to be infantry. I'm an active person. I love physical activity. I want to be in the trenches. I want to be digging.
Yeah.
You think military, right? You watch all these movies, that's what you think,
Yeah,
right? The Navy, I didn't even know they had Navy.
Right, fair enough, yeah.
They're like, do you have a degree? I said, I do. Like, you're going to be an officer. I'm like, okay. You know what? You're the kind of person who wants to drive warships. I'm like, we have warships?
This is awesome.
So this is like, it's a recruiting, right? So they give you a CD. They're like, you know what? Here's my information. Take this CD and watch it. I did. And it was remarkable.
Tell me about that.
Well, it was like, you're driving a warship, you have all these small boats, right? It was exciting, right? I'm like, I love concurrent activity. I love a regimented lifestyle. This is what I grew up with. I want it. So I signed up. But it was really interesting because at the same time, I was kind of going through the RCMP process.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
You're keeping irons in the fire.
Right? But the RCMP was going through a lot of sort of changes, and that process was taking a long time. And so I went through the whole process of getting to the military. I signed up, I got in, and then 3 weeks later, the RCMP sent me an offer.
Okay.
I said, you know what? At this point, I am so excited for the Navy. I could drive a warship, absolutely. And so,
another wonderful episode of Gale Force Wins. I'm just going to say this. If you can't find inspiration in this story, I don't know how you can't. It's unbelievable. Really remarkable. And thank you very much for sharing your story with us, inviting us in. Thanks for smiling and catching our attention to want to talk to you. It's absolutely wonderful. And thank you for what you're doing for Canada. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, another great edition of Gale Force Wins, and Gerry and I, as we mentioned earlier, had the pleasure of walking through Irving Shipyard, seeing these wonderful Arctic offshore patrol ships being built. And I got to tell you, it was pretty remarkable to see the steel come in one end, big modules being clicked together at the other end, and then you walk right out the door and there's a brand new warship right in front of you.
Well, you're right. It was incredible.
It was unbelievable, Gerry. But here's the best part. Somebody gets to be in charge of that brand new shiny warship, and that's got to be a privilege.
Yeah.
So without further ado, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Commander Nicole Robichaud, and I'm a commanding officer of HMCS Margaret Brooke, our newest AOPV that just came off the line and delivered.
What does that AOPV stand for?
Arctic Offshore Patrol Vessel.
Right.
So it was delivered to the RCN on the 15th of July, and we're now getting it ready to go and take it out on our first sail in mid-November.
It still has the new car smell.
It's got new car smell.
Totally has new car smell.
100%. Nicole, where are you from originally?
So I've moved around a lot as a kid, but I moved to Red Deer, Alberta. I went to junior high and high school in Red Deer, Alberta, so I consider that home.
Red Deer, Alberta. I don't see the connection.
Not many people do.
No, okay, but so what was it about the sea?
Well, as a kid, I was in Sea Cadets. So I was a Sea Cadet from the age of 13 to 19, and then I was also a Sea Cadet officer until I just joined the Wright Force in 2002. So through my time in Sea Cadets, I got to go and spend the summers out in Comox, BC at HMCS Quadra.
Wow.
And from there, I got to go and drive on boats, learn how to drive the training vessels, sailing. So I spent more time out west in the ocean than...
What was the name of your Sea Cadet Corps?
RCSCC Red Deer.
RCSC Red Deer.
Yeah, that's where I was a cadet.
Yeah. And then you went out to Quadra every summer.
Every summer, and then when I went to university, I went to university at University of Alberta, and I switched over and became an officer at RCSC Resolute in Edmonton, Alberta.
My goodness gracious. So it's amazing, you'd be surprised how many guests we've had on, and not all military, that have a foundation in the cadet organization.
It's the best program out there.
Tell me
I
about
didn't
it.
know there was cadets in Red Deer, frankly.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. What it meant
It's
to
the
you.
best program out there. It goes and teaches kids self-discipline, time management, responsibility, self-confidence. So
Right.
you go and do things that that a typical kid would not do. So going away from home each summer to go and meet new people from all across Canada. So I have a wide network of friends from West Coast all the way to Newfoundland and up north even.
Right.
It's just a remarkable experience. The best program out there.
So it's interesting, right? I came through the cadet program as well. I was in RCSCC Terra Nova. That's where I went to cadet. And I still have friends to this day from when I was in cadets. Is that the same for you?
Yeah, that's the same for me.
Yeah.
So
what is that about? Why is that?
I don't know. It's not many people can go and say they've maintained friendships from when they're a teenager. So it's going on 30 years now. Not everyone goes there, right? And you go and see, I don't know, you just see the icebergs, which everyone's fascinated with. You can see the wildlife, which we don't get to go and see here. Just the way of living is different. There's a majestic factor about it.
Yeah.
I think it's just because to me it's an unknown, so it's very majestic, and the fact that I get to go and travel up there on board this ship is just...
You get to go up there and travel on a pretty cool ship.
I do.
Okay, right? So that's cool in of itself. Ship doesn't function on its own, and it is beautiful. The ship really is. It is truly something all of Canadians should be proud of. But it functions with the people inside it. Tell me about those folks.
So the crew has been posted to HMCS Margaret Brooke for some of them as long as 2.5 years now. And so if you go and do the math, 2.5 years, and we just got the ship on the 15th of July, a lot of people have gone and put a lot of time and effort to make sure that Margaret Brooke is what she is right now. So I am looking forward to taking these people out on our inaugural sail in November so that we can go and see the work come to fruition, to see that yes, we've all worked together. It's huge.
Right.
We went from a bare bones steel ship to bringing everything on board to making sure that we can go to sea as a group. A lot of training that's been happening. A lot of storing the ship, making sure that we're ready to go. So to go and see that first time that we're off the wall, so we're not tied up to a jetty.
Yeah.
Then the looks on the crew's face. There's a lot of time and effort that went into this.
What's it going to feel like when you just back away from the jetty for the first time?
Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. Okay.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
But that'll be an insight that no one else but me will feel that.
But you'll know you're ready for it and all that.
We're ready for it. So the team has gone and put the time and put the training. We've done. By the time we get there in November, we will do everything that we could possibly done to ensure that we're ready for this.
You know, Natasha, we always ask our guests to leave the audience with a piece of advice. You've had a great journey, for sure. And not only have you had a great journey to get here, quite frankly, you're in the middle of a great journey and on a trajectory. So, I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun the next however many years that you stay doing this on behalf of the country. What would a piece of advice be?
Go out and do it. I don't know, you're never going to go experience stuff unless you go out and do it. And as you go and do your journey, you're going to make mistakes along the way. Don't be afraid to make those mistakes. Rather, learn from the mistakes and don't do them again.
Right.
Make it better.
Right. Make it better.
Yeah.
Gerry, your thoughts?
Well, you know what? I don't think everybody gets a sense of what I'm seeing as you speak. And it's happened to me multiple times as we sailed from St. John's, interviewing various people. Your story is incredible, but there's also another character in what we're doing with the Navy, and that's the location and the ships. And as I stand here, Allan is here, you're here, Halifax Shipyard is right there. I'm so proud to be a Canadian. What this ship is, and the steel and metal and bolts that we saw earlier this morning, and now to meet you taking command. And exhibiting the leadership to say, you know what, I'm going to be nervous. See, that's what I like about leaders.
Terrified, she says.
Yeah, I had to, yes, terrified. Not only nervous, she's going to be terrified.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am, for coming and doing this with us.
Well, another wonderful edition of Gale Force Winds. And Gerry's right. The setting is beautiful. The ship is spectacular. And I don't think you can gauge it fully on the podcast And I can tell you one thing that you can't gauge fully on the podcast is the amount of passion this woman has for what she's doing right now.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Wins Season 2 on Rogers TV, where we focus on conversations with leaders, business owners, and change makers that...
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.